Well, surely by now we are all aware of how dramatically drug overdose deaths went up during 2020. But what happened with alcohol consumption? That's what we're going to get into today.
I'm JT. I'm in my mid-30s, have a 10-year media career, and nearly a decade of sobriety. So how did another middle-class kid turn into a blackout drunk and a heroin junkie? More importantly, how did it change, and where do we go from here? This is my story.
So yeah, maybe you're not aware of how drug overdose deaths went up in 2020 during the pandemic. And if you're not, did a whole video on it a couple weeks back. Feel free to go back and watch. But the breaking news on that was it was dramatic. So drug overdose deaths went up tremendously. The numbers are staggering. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And guess what? Those numbers were probably going up with or without the pandemic. The pandemic just put the pedal to the metal. But what's the story on alcohol? And there's a purpose to me bringing this up. Well, you probably guessed, yes, alcohol consumption went up throughout the world in 2020. Let's get into this. This is from the World Economic Forum. This is from November 11th, William Stilley. The headline, "More people drank excessively during the pandemic. The world must tackle its alcohol problem." Now, I'm just going to get into the few of the bullet points here, few of the statistics. So we will start. During the COVID-19 pandemic, people have significantly changed drinking habits. Overall, most people did not change how much they drank, but among those who did, a larger proportion of people drank more. So this kind of stands to reason, right? You can just imagine. In fact, you have probably talked about it. You've probably heard experts talk about it over the past 18 months. You can just imagine people in their houses more, people with a lot less going out to do. They're socializing less. All of the reasons that can go into this, right? They all kind of just are logical why it would happen. As bars and restaurants closed, here's another angle, there has also been naturally an increase in people drinking alone. With no bartender to cut someone off, people may drink more and more likely to engage in harmful practices. In England and Wales, alcohol-related deaths reached a record high in 2020. In the United States, fatal car crashes involving alcohol jumped 9%. Here's the kicker. Even with fewer cars on the road. Think about that. Now, I'm here in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, where we pretty much had cars driving around the whole time, but so many places in America, you know for a fact there was less. I mean, it was like ghost towns out there, and yet it went up 9%. So obviously more people drinking, more alcohol-related deaths because of the excess in drinking due to the pandemic. I'm not really here today to talk about why this happened or what necessarily the solution is. But what I want to give you is a look inside my alcoholic and drug addict mind and kind of how I view the difference between alcoholism and drug addiction. Because we see that these things react equally during a time like last year. Why is that? You may be a person that thinks alcohol is worse than any other drug in the world, certainly worse than marijuana, and so it should be regulated even more, or at least looked at, investigated, cared for more. And I wouldn't say that you're wrong, although I have a little bit of a different opinion. Or you may be a person that says alcohol is legal, it's been legal for forever, since Prohibition, and drugs with fentanyl coming in, those are the real problems. Well, I'm here to tell you that from my perspective, and from the perspective, I believe, of a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics in the world, there is no difference. There is no difference, in my opinion, in my experience. Whenever I introduce myself as an alcoholic and a drug addict. You've sat here and you've seen many of my videos talking about my addiction, talking about my time before I got sober, talking about my sobriety, and you've heard me talk a lot about my heroin addiction, my opiate use, but I also have a laundry list of bullet points having to do with my alcoholism. I have a DWI. I went to jail for the first time because of an alcohol-related incident. In fact, everything that's really public until I started just spouting off all my dirty laundry here on YouTube. Anything that is public is really just, you would only be able to deduce that I had a few alcohol related problems when I was a young person. You wouldn't see anything relating to my heroin addiction or opiate addiction. You certainly wouldn't see anything about the, cocaine I used, or the barbiturates, or the Xanax, or the psychedelics. And I did all of it, okay? The point is, it's all the same. It is all the same, in my opinion, for the addict or the alcoholic. I can name plenty of times in my use before I got sober where I thought that my problem was just drinking. And if I could just cut back on the drinking, I went a whole semester in college one time. I didn't take a single sip of alcohol. And I actually kind of thought that I was living sober. But I didn't stop smoking marijuana. I didn't stop using psychedelics. I just had this whole from the ground thing. And I'm going to be fine. Guess what? Things were a little better for a while for me. But when push came to shove, I ended up drinking again. I didn't get any healthier during that time. And I made a lot of the same mistakes anyways. And my brain did not have the time to heal. I did not take recovery seriously, the program seriously, just because I wasn't drinking alcohol. And the same can be said on the other side. When I became a heroin addict, I thought for a while, man, if I could just lay off the heroin a little bit and I could just go drink and have a good time with my friends. In fact, 1 year almost before I got sober, I tried to go do a little drinking instead of heroin that night and be a little social and have some fun. And it ended me up in jail where I had to eat my whole thing of heroin on the way to prison to not, get charged with that. The point is that it really is all the same for me. They're all bad. They're all not good for me. It could be one or the other. And it's the same reason that I say after all this time, and heroin is what finally got me sober, but I don't believe for a second that I could just start drinking again casually. And I think if I did, God willing that doesn't happen, but if I did, maybe I'd drink casually for a little while, but there's no doubt in my mind that very quickly I would start drinking alcoholically again, and probably short after that, I would probably end up using illicit drugs again. And this stuff doesn't go away. I've told you before, there are many times throughout my life, in my nearly 10 years of sobriety, that something, a little, the little devil on my shoulder would just pop in my head and go, hey, maybe you could use drugs recreationally. Maybe you could smoke a little marijuana at night or on the weekends. The thought has even popped into my mind from time to time, maybe I could do heroin recreationally again. If that doesn't tell you that this is a lifelong battle and that it doesn't just go away or get better with time and experience, I don't know what does. But the point is, it's all the same. It's all the same. And that is not to diminish anyone's specific problem with one thing or another. But the point is that it can be very dangerous for a person who's struggling with one or the other, for someone who's struggling with, let's just say, cocaine, or someone who's struggling just with alcohol, to think that they could just stop using one thing and then use another thing recreationally and get their life together. And it happens to a degree from time to time, but I can't tell you how many stories I hear of people who just, their lives are in shambles, and they decide, oh, well, I can just smoke marijuana now, and I'm not going to drink anymore. And maybe they pull that off. But I think if you woke that person up in the middle of the night, or you gave them the truth serum, you will find out that there's something still in their life they're not getting to the bottom of. There's something still in their life that they're hiding from, or they're having to mask with this thing. And that's probably right, because guess what? I believe we were put on this earth to be able to exist, generally speaking, with our own bodies and gifts, and yeah, from the nourishment of the earth, but without the mind-altering stuff. Now, granted, there are exceptions. I actually think there's some really cool stuff being done out there that I am not smart enough to have a proper opinion on with hallucinogenics and depression, things like that. Marijuana use with cancer patients. Those are very, very, very exceptional instances. In the grand scheme of things, that is a small, very small percentage when in regards calculating the whole load, the millions and millions of people on our planet who are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. And the reason I think this is important is because it's very easy, especially for the addict brain and also for friends and family around someone who is struggling, to accept the use of something else, or to say, oh, my problem is brown liquor. Oh, my problem is shots. My problem is tequila. If I could just drink beer, it'll be all right. I had all of those inner dialogues. I had all of those conversations. I had times when I thought, oh, if I just stopped drinking and I could do all this other stuff, I'd be fine. And I had other times where it was like, oh, if I could just stop doing drugs, maybe I just have a drug addiction problem and I can drink casually. For me, through my experience, the alcoholic and drug addict experience is the same, no matter what the substance is. And the solution can be the same no matter what the substance is too. I'm a believer in abstinence. I think that is the solution for drug addiction and alcoholism. It's not the only one. That's the one that worked for me. Kudos for anyone who has success with other things. But I will tell you that time and time again, I see the same be true for other people. I just think it's an important distinction that it doesn't matter what the substance is. We are suffering. Our society is suffering. The people on our planet are suffering. And there's a lot of things in the world that we're suffering from. Most of it, I believe, coming from internally. I think it's a spiritual existence, and it's a spiritual malady, and it's getting to the core of that's going to ultimately fix the problems and help the abstinence part. It's really not about, for me, taking the things out of my life. I have to take the things out of my life so I can see clearly enough and I can hear the right messages and I can make the right decisions and take the right actions. But then what's more important is adding the right stuff into my life. Filling my life with the positive things, filling my life with the right action to take, the doing the next right thing. And I can't do that if I'm clouded by one thing or another. It doesn't matter. I have different experiences on different things. You could probably go back through my history and say, oh, I managed this drug pretty well. But really, I think you could find something that I made a big mistake on with every drug or drink that I used, and I did them all. There's not one you could list that I didn't do. I promise you. I made mistakes on all of them, and I had life-altering consequences with all of them eventually. So the point is, to me, they're all the same. They're all the same, and we have to... That doesn't mean you can treat them all the same, but it does mean that we got to consider these things when we're looking through this data. It's no coincidence that drug overdose deaths and that alcohol-related incidents and alcohol consumption went up during the pandemic. But it's also not a coincidence that they're both going up, right? Because they're really the same thing. All right, let's get the mail. Mail today coming from Instagram, Miss Lucky Wins. Miss Lucky Wins says, drug and alcohol serve a purpose for users who are often looking to minimize pain and maximize pleasure. Users who become addicted often start because of negative feelings such as sadness, loneliness, discomfort, and restlessness. Give everyone you love grace. You can obviously see why I thought that comment parlayed or followed our conversation today. Kind of general, but also, very, very collegiate. Your comment there, Miss Lucky Wins. But I wanted to key in mostly on the last line. Give everyone you love grace. That is why the conversation we had is so important, to understand that it's the same. It's all the same. You're not better off because it's alcohol and it's legal, or better off because it's marijuana and it's ostensibly safer, or better off because it's just a little cocaine. They're young. It's only on the weekends. Ultimately, it's up to the person, because yes, there are people out there who can use recreationally. I'm not one of them. Or who can drink recreationally. I love those people. I wish I was one of them. I'm not, and I don't begrudge those people. More power to you. If you can use, there's plenty of people. Okay, most people can use recreationally. At least alcohol, can drink alcohol recreationally, and I think that's a good thing. Wish I could. I can't. But Miss Lucky Wins is absolutely right. These are some of the big reasons why people use, and these are some of the big reasons why it doesn't matter what the substance is, whether it be alcohol or drugs. Minimize pain, maximize pleasure. Sometimes it is as hedonistic as that. It is as simple as needing to minimize pain or wanting to maximize pleasure. And yes, the feelings of sadness, loneliness, discomfort, and restlessness all go into them. I will tell you from my experience of being a long-term addict with a lot of problems, all of those things came into play at one time or another. After a while, there were so many of them, I couldn't keep track of what the reasons I was using were. It's just like, this is just how I need to operate to live. So great point by Miss Lucky Wins, but none greater than the last statement. Give everyone you love grace. No matter what the substance is, no matter what it is that they're going through, please give them grace. That doesn't mean excuse bad behavior, because I am a big believer I have a big heart for people who are not users, who are the family and loved ones of users. I have a big heart for them getting, walked over and suffering additionally because of the addict. It's incredibly hard. There's almost no concise way to say how to deal with it, but I believe you can give grace and also protect yourself. And I think that's important. You got to do both. So thank you, Ms. Lucky Wins. If you would like to contribute to the mail, you can, of course, comment on any of the YouTube videos. I get alerts on all the comments. You can comment on any one, no matter when it was posted, or you can comment anytime I post one of the clips on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. All of those links are below. You can, of course, also DM. If you'd like to have a private conversation, we can. I will not post anything from a DM without reaching out to you first. All right, that's all the time we got for today. See you next time. Hey family, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from watching this, and feel free to comment below. Love.